Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I'm here with my August reading update or check-in. So I mentioned in my previous reading plans video for the beginning part of August, which I will link down below, I mentioned that I was planning to do a check-in because there are a couple of readathons happening in the later part of the month that I really wanted to participate in. And the books I talked about before, I definitely am still planning to read. I actually have been doing really great with my TBR. I think I've finished something like 7 or 8 books off that list already, and it's only the 9th, plus a couple of other books that I wasn't necessarily planning on reading. So I'm feeling pretty good about my reading. So of course the answer is to plan for even more reading challenges, right? So I am going to go ahead as planned and talk about some books I hope to read for the rest of the month. I'm going to be talking about the books I plan to read for Tome Topple and also for the History Challenge. I will link all the information for those down below. Tome Topple I think actually started yesterday. I'm filming this on the 9th and it started August 8th. And then the History Challenge goes from August 17th through the 30th. But before we get into those, I do have a couple of buddy reads that I am planning for the second half of the month that I'm really excited about. The first one is The Reluctant Queen by Sarah Beth Durst. This is the second book in the Queens of Renthia series. I think it's a trilogy. And I'm going to be buddy reading this with my friend Huck from Badger Reads. We both read the first book in the series and I really enjoyed it when I read it. And I just haven't gotten to the second book even though I've been planning to read it for a long time. So we decided that we are going to buddy read it together. And I am just really looking forward to it. I'm curious to see how this one goes because it follows a different main character. And I tend to do really well with companion series, so we will see. But yeah, really looking forward to reading this and discussing it with Huck. And then the other buddy read I have is Beartown by Frederick Backman. This will be a buddy read with my friend Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe. I have been meaning to read this book for ages. I have only read a novella from Frederick Backman, but I have really wanted to read his novels for a long time, and I have especially heard amazing things about this one. So Olivia Savannah and I will be buddy reading this, and again, very much looking forward to that and to discussing it. I think this is going to be a very hard book to read in some ways, but I think I've heard amazing things about it. I've heard it's really compelling and a really important and powerful story. This one is set in a Swedish town, I believe, that is pretty much run by ice hockey. That's the heart of the town. And I think shortly before a championship or something that could really help save this town and kind of put it on the map, one of the star hockey players rapes a girl in the town. So everybody starts taking sides about whether they believe her and how that is going to affect the town's future going forward. And like I said, I've just heard really incredible things about this. I think it's going to be a really important story. So really looking forward to discussing this with Olivia Savannah. And before I get into the books I want to read for Tome Topple, I do want to mention in my previous TBR video I talked about one of the prompts for the Adventures Club readathon was to read a mystery, and you're supposed to read all books by female authors for that readathon, and I had pulled one that was not by a female author, and I was like, oh, I'll just pick a different one and then update in my mid-month reading check-in, and I ended up just deciding to use Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Even though that is a Gothic horror novel, there is a pretty strong mystery element, so I'm going to count that one, which I have already read and loved. I read it in less than a day. I'm actually planning to do a full review on that one because I absolutely loved it. I anticipate that being one of my favorite books of the year. So yeah, that's what I'm reading for that prompt. And now into the Tome Topple books. We'll see if this will actually happen. I have quite a few here, and I even thought about I'm just gonna pick one big book, one book over 500 pages for Tome Topple this round. I'm not gonna stress myself out about hitting all the prompts, but if you give me tiers of prompts, I'm gonna try and complete the highest tier because that is just who I am as a human being. I sometimes wish I was not like this, but whatever. So the first book I hope to get to during Tome Topple is Furyborn by Claire Legrand. This is the first book in a fantasy trilogy that I have been wanting to read for a really long time. I've been meaning to read it for a really long time, and it's, I think, finally time to read it. And I'm using this for the prompt to read one tome, and also the prompt to read a book that you started during another round of Tome Topple. Each book can only count for a maximum of 2 prompts, and if I'm remembering correctly, I think I did start this during another round of Tome Topple. I don't even know if it was specifically for Tome Topple, but I remember reading the first couple chapters and really enjoying it, and I'm pretty sure it was during a round of Tome Topple. Clearly I'm not 100% sure about that, but I have been wanting to get to this for a long time, so I hope to for this round. Another book I really want to read is The History of White People by Nell Irvin Painter. This is a nonfiction book, and I'm counting this for the prompt to read a book by a Black author and also to read a standalone book. I guess it's kind of weird to call a nonfiction book standalone because there are pretty few nonfiction series, but I'm gonna count it for that anyway. And including the notes and everything at the back of the book. The hardcover copy of this book is over 500 pages. I have the paperback because I like paperbacks better. And this is pretty much what it sounds like. I think it's the history of whiteness as a construct, and it kind of traces that through different periods of history and through different regions. And I just think this is gonna be really important, really informative. The next book I want to read is one I have been meaning to read for literal years now, and that is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Mistborn series. Yeah, I have been intimidated about starting this series for a while. I actually did a video on the books that have been on my Goodreads TBR the longest. I will link that down below if you haven't seen it. But this was on there. And actually, way back when, my friend Hannah from Lynn Hermione, she actually picked this as part of my BookTube Friends Choose My TBR video, or challenge. I have not read a book from that challenge in a very long time, so I would like to get back to it, and I would like to finally read this one. I have really enjoyed the 3 books I have read from Brandon Sanderson previously, and I just haven't picked up any of his super popular ones, so we'll see how this goes, but I want to finally get to that. So that's for the oldest tome on your TBR prompt. And then I also have on my list The Boundless by Anna Bright, and this is for the most recently acquired tome, because when I looked back at, like, I keep track of what books I like bring in or acquire. When I looked back through my lists, this is like back in June. This was the last time that I bought a book that was, this copy was over 500 pages. Like, I have bought quite a few longer books, but just none that have been over 500 pages, I guess. So this is the sequel to The Beholder, which I read last year and really enjoyed. I actually have a full review on that book, and I'm really excited for this. I'm also kind of nervous because I feel like some things that I want to happen are not going to happen. Like, it's one of those books where when I finished the first one, I was like, I'm okay with like whatever direction this like relationship stuff goes. And then as time went on, I was like, actually, I do have an opinion. And I don't think that is what is going to happen here. But I'm still excited to read this one and see how the series turns out, because this is a duology. So looking forward to that. And then finally, the last book on my Tome Topple TBR that I hope to get to is The Dark Days Club by Alison Goodman. I have read Eon by Alison Goodman, which I really didn't like, but this is a very different series, and I'm hoping that I enjoy this one more. And I'm using this for the prompt that is a genre you don't usually read, I think is what it's called. That was actually a really hard prompt for me because I read really widely. Like, I enjoy reading widely, but the reason I'm counting this book for it, even though it is historical fantasy, which is something I do read a lot of and really enjoy, I think it's more of a like paranormal type fantasy or urban fantasy, even though it is in a historical setting, and paranormal or urban fantasy is definitely one of the things I read least. So yeah, excited to finally get to this one. I have heard really good things about this series, so I'm hoping that I really enjoy this one. And this paperback edition is not quite 500 pages, but I think one of the hardcover editions is, so that's why I'm counting it, because there just has to be one edition that is over 500 pages according to the rules. So those are the books that I hope to read for this round of Tome Topple. It is a lot. We'll see. Like, I have been reading a ton lately, but it also depends on my mood, because like I have been also mood reading more. So hopefully I'm still in the mood for those books throughout the rest of the month of August. So now I'm going to talk about the books I hope to read for the History Challenge, which is from August 17th through 30th. Again, linking all the information down below, including the Twitter account and everything. I'm really, really excited about this one. And before I get into the books, there's a couple things about the way this readathon is set up that I really love. One of them is that the hosts are encouraging people to be like pretty creative with how they interpret the prompts rather than being like really strict with them, which I love. And also that historical fiction is also included, so it's not just nonfiction history, which makes me really happy because number one, historical fiction is one of my favorite genres, and number two, like, I feel like there can be a little bit of snobbery between people who read history and people who read historical fiction. Like, I also read nonfiction, but I'm a big fan of historical fiction, and it always bothers me when it's like sometimes people treat it as like historical fiction is for people who aren't smart enough for like nonfiction history, which I don't love. And when I say people, I obviously don't mean the hosts of this readathon. I just mean there's like that general feeling. So I'm super happy that historical fiction is included here. I have some nonfiction and some historical fiction, and also a kind of like speculative fiction book. So really, really excited about these, and let's get into it. I am trying to complete every prompt because of course I am, and you can also like double or triple up or like basically count every book for as many prompts as you can. Which I also love. So the first one that I want to read is actually an audiobook that I have started listening to today, and that is The Inconvenient Indian by Thomas King. I'm actually reading this for Read-A-thon. It's by a Canadian author, and this I'm counting for the Black, Indigenous, or Person of Color author prompt. I'm counting this for the Revisiting a School Topic prompt because obviously we did learn about Indigenous populations in school, but in a very sanitized and edited way most of the time. And like I said, I have actually already started this one. So if I have finished it before the readathon starts, I have another book that I could fit in here that is also about Indigenous history. But I am like loving this audiobook so far. I'm like just under half an hour in, but I am already just really, really enjoying it. And as I have said many times before, audiobooks are not actually great for me. Like, I have to work really hard to do audiobooks, and I don't generally enjoy them. But this one I am actively enjoying listening to because it's just so well written and so engaging. So really loving that. And Then I actually have another audiobook on my TBR. Who am I? You know, just broadening my horizons here. And that is Talking Back, Talking Black, Truths About America's Lingua Franca by John McWhorter. And this is a pretty short book, I think, on AAVE and the fact that it is actually its own separate language or dialect. Especially recently, there has been a lot more work going towards African-American vernacular English and it being its own separate language or dialect, like the way it has like grammar rules, it has a specific vocabulary, like it fits all of the criteria for being a language or dialect, and just some people don't acknowledge it that way. I actually heard about this one from Ariel at She Wants Addiction, and it just sounded super interesting, so I'm really excited to listen to this one. And I'm counting this for the contemporary history prompt, social issue prompt, and I think for microhistory, because it is focusing on a specific language in, I think, a specific location. Like, I'm pretty sure it's just going to be on the United States. I'll talk later about how I'm not exactly sure what microhistory is because I hadn't actually heard that term until recently. So this might count for microhistory because even though it is on a language, which is kind of a wide-ranging topic, I think it's going to be a more like focused examination of that. We'll see. Also, there are several prompts that I'm reading, multiple books that could count for it, like the person of color author. I mentioned the one that I'm specifically reading for that is The Inconvenient Indian, but I could also use Talking Back, Talking Black. So yeah, I'm only counting one per prompt, even though I have multiple ones that could fit into certain prompts. And then I also really want to get to Bad Girls Throughout History, and I'm using this for the prompt that is history book written by a woman and also a biography. This is actually a collection of like multiple biographies, and this is by Anne Shen. It's 100 Remarkable Women Who Changed the World is the subtitle, and I'm really excited to get to this. I really loved Anne Shen's mythology book that I read, and she does just like really beautiful illustrations, as you can see from the cover. I actually read a lot of nonfiction or history that's by women. I would say the majority of the nonfiction I read is by women, so this was a pretty easy prompt to do, but I have been wanting to read this for a long time and I'm really excited to finally do that. And then my historical fiction pick is The House Guest, A Pride and Prejudice Vagary by Elizabeth Adams. This is on my retelling bingo list that, once again, I have not actually posted that TBR video. At this point, I'm not sure I'm going to. Like, it's August. For a yearly TBR, it's probably too late, but I do still want to read the books on that list, and this is a Pride and Prejudice retelling that I'm really excited for. I really enjoyed the other book I have read by Elizabeth Adams, so I'm hoping to enjoy this one as well. I'm counting this for the historical fiction prompt and for the book that takes place in a different country and on a different continent, because this is set in England, and I live in the United States. Then for myth or folklore, I have done something a little bit different. This is actually a speculative fiction book, but it is based on, I think, specific myth or folklore. That is The Deep by River Solomon with Devi Diggs, William Hudson, and Jonathan Snipes. So this is a very short book by a non-binary author who I've been wanting to read for a really long time, and this book, or this novella, is about the descendants of African slave women who were thrown off the slave ships because they were pregnant, and it's about their descendants becoming mermaids. And there's one person in her group who is kind of like the memory keeper, so she's responsible for holding on to all of those memories and all of that trauma, so that the rest of her people don't have to experience that. And I've just heard really incredible things about this story, and I have been wanting to get to it for a long time. I'm counting this for the myth or folklore prompt because this is based on mermaid folklore, or it incorporates mermaid folklore into the story. And then I also have a book that I am currently reading that I'm counting for a couple of prompts because I think we're kind of taking this kind of slow, so I think we're still going to be reading it when the readathon happens, and that is Cleopatra, A Life by Stacy Schiff. I'm buddy reading this with my friend Kier from Kier the Scrivener, and we're both really enjoying it, and I'm using this for a favorite time period because I love ancient Egyptian history and also for ancient history, and Cleopatra is one of my absolute favorite historical figures, and I am really enjoying this biography of her so far, so I'm very excited to continue reading this with Kier. And then finally, the last book on my list is a double up with Tome Topple. That is The History of White People by Nell Irvin Painter. So here's where I get really confused about what exactly microhistory is, because I had this down for the macrohistory prompt because it's going to cover a huge range of like time and place. It's going to be like looking at whiteness as a concept in various iterations. Like, it sounds like it should be a shoo-in for macrohistory. And when I was trying to figure out what microhistory was, I had looked up some definitions and I was still kind of unsure. So I looked up some examples of microhistory, and this was one of the books on that list. So I don't know. This could be, I guess, micro or macro history, but I definitely do want to read it. So maybe somebody can tell me in the comments if this would count for micro or macro history, or possibly both, because clearly I don't know. So those are all the books that I hope to read for various other readathons or projects or buddy reads happening during the second part of the month. I'm really excited about all of these. Like I said, I've been doing really well with my reading, so I feel like reasonably confident. Tome Topple, we'll see, because those are obviously very big books, but I feel like pretty good about these. We'll see if I can actually get to them or most of them during the month. Normally when I do these like mid-month reading check-ins, I do kind of a currently reading update, but I have actually mentioned a few of the books I'm currently reading already, and I feel like this video is already going to be long enough, so I don't really want to add to that. So no currently reading update today, but please comment down below and let me know if you guys are participating in either of those readathons or something that you hope to read during the rest of August that you're really excited for, or something you're reading right now that you're enjoying. Just talk to me in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!